Hello, Mike.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Not bad, not bad. I think you're freezing.
Am I freezing? Maybe I should get out of some of these programs here. Hold on a second. Let me exit out of some programs so I don't take up so much space.
Oh.
Krishna Jayanti is coming up. That's the annual anniversary of the Krishna speaking the Bhagavad-gītā. I think it's on the 14th this year. Nitya Dita, I don't know if you know him, but he's from New Vrindavan. He came over to my house and he bought like 10 Gitas because they're having an all-day reading on the 13th for and to commemorate that event. Last year it was exactly on Christmas. It was kind of auspicious.
Christmas, yeah.
But let's just jump in right here. Chapter 3. Making progress, getting her done. Okay, I think I'll start out this time. I'm about 3.5 hours into Lord Chaitanya's discussion with Sanatan Goswami in the Madhya Lila. It's a pretty long chapter. It must be about at least 6.5 hours.
Oh, wow. Okay.
About over 400 verses. But let's see. Okay, text 1. Arjuna Vacha Jayasi Che Karmanaste Matabuddha Janadana Tat Kim Karmani Gore Mam Neo Jayasi Keshava. Synonyms. Arjuna Vacha, Arjuna said, Jayasi, better chet if karmana than fruit of action. Te, by you, mata is considered buddhi, intelligence, Janardana, O Krishna. Tat, therefore, Kim, why? Karmani, in action, gore, ghastly, mum, me. Neo Jayasi, you are engaging, Keshava, O Krishna. Translation. Arjuna said, "Oh, Janardana, O Keshava, why do you want me to engage in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruit of work?" You can read the purport.
Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, has very elaborately described the constitution of the soul in the previous chapter, with a view to delivering his intimate friend Arjuna from the ocean of material grief. And the path of realization has been recommended, Buddha Yoga or Krishna consciousness. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is misunderstood to be inertia, and one with such a misunderstanding often withdraws to a secluded place to become fully Krishna conscious by chanting the holy name of Lord Krishna. But without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it is not advisable to chant the holy name of Krishna in a secluded place, where one may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public. Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness or Buddha Yoga, or intelligence and spiritual advancement of knowledge, as something like retirement from active life in the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. But as a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and questioned Krishna as to his best course of action. In answer, Lord Krishna elaborately explained karma yoga, or work in Krishna consciousness, in this 3rd chapter.
Go ahead and read the next verse.
Okay, text 2. Jamishreena vyaktenya udimoya moayai siva me tarikam vara nishchicha yena shreyam apunyam. Synonyms. Jamishreena, by equivocal. Eva, certainly. Vyaktenya, words. Buddhim, intelligence. Mahayasi, you are bewildering. Eva, certainly. Me, my. Tat, therefore. Ekam, only one. Vada, please tell. Nischitya, ascertaining. Yena, by which. Shreya, real benefit. Aham, I. Apunayam, may have. Translation. My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be most beneficial for me.
Purport. In the previous chapter, as a prelude to the Bhagavad-gītā, many different paths were explained, such as Sankhya Yoga, Buddhi Yoga, control of the senses by intelligence, work without fruitive desire, and the position of the neophyte. This was all presented unsystematically. A more organized outline of the path would be necessary for action and understanding. Arjuna, therefore, wanted to clear up these apparently confusing matters so that any common man could accept them without misinterpretation. Although Krishna had no intention of confusing Arjuna by any jugglery of words, Arjuna could not follow the process of Krishna consciousness, either by inertia or by active service. In other words, by his questions, he is clearing the path of Krishna consciousness for all students who sincerely want to understand the mystery of the Bhagavad-gītā. I'll go ahead and read the Sanskrit as well. Text 3, Sri Bhagavan Vacha, Lokismin Dvivedadnishta Puraproktam Mayanaga, Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam, Karma Yogena Yoginam. Synonym, Sri Bhagavan Vacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Loka, in this world, Asmin, this, Dviveda, two kinds of Nishta, faith, Pura, formally, Prokta were said, Maya, by me, Anaga, O sinless one, Jnana Yogena, by the linking process of knowledge, Sankhyanam, of the empiric philosophers, Karma Yogena, by the linking process of devotion, Yoginam, of the devotees. Translation, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Oh, sinless Arjuna, I've already explained that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical philosophical speculation, and others by devotional service. You can read the purport.
Okay. In the second chapter, verse 39, the Lord explained two kinds of procedures, namely Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga, or Buddhi Yoga. In this verse, the Lord explains the same more clearly. Sankhya Yoga, or the analytical study of the nature of spirit and matter, is the subject matter for persons who are inclined to speculate and understand things by experimental knowledge and philosophy. The other class of men work in Krishna consciousness, as it explained in the 61st verse of the second chapter. The Lord has explained also in the 39th verse that by working by the principles of Buddhi Yoga or Krishna consciousness, one can be relieved from the bonds of action, and furthermore, there is no flaw in the process. The same principle is more clearly explained in the 61st verse, that this Buddhi Yoga is to depend entirely on the Supreme, or more specifically on Krishna. And in this way, all the senses can be brought under control very easily. Therefore, both the yogas are interdependent as religion and philosophy. Religion without philosophy is sentiment and sometimes fanaticism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. The ultimate goal is Krishna, because philosophers who are also sincerely searching after the absolute truth come in the end to Krishna consciousness. This is also stated in the Bhagavad-gītā. The whole process is to understand the real position of the self in relation to the superself. The indirect process is philosophical speculation, by which gradually one may come to the point of Krishna consciousness. And the other process is directly connecting everything with Krishna in Krishna consciousness. Of these two, the path of Krishna consciousness is better because it does not depend on purifying the senses by a philosophical process. Krishna consciousness is itself the purifying process, and by the direct method of devotional service, it is simultaneously easy and sublime.
Yeah, that reminds me of something I posted the other day. Let me look. Are you seeing my screen here when I scroll to the other? Okay. Yeah, there's one thing that I posted the other day. Shoot. Yeah, here it is. One who desires nothing but Krishna and who is not influenced by the process of Jnana-marg, cultivation of knowledge, actually becomes free from ignorance. A first-class person is one who is not influenced by karma, fruitive activity, or yoga, mystic power. He simply depends on Krishna and is satisfied in his devotional service. That's what Krishna is talking about, the easier path. Jnana yoga is, you use your analytical mind to understand the truth. But Krishna consciousness is directly just linking with Krishna and just hearing from him through the scriptures or through the spiritual master or through this process that we're doing right now. We're not changing anything in the Bhagavad-gītā. We're just presenting exactly what Krishna is telling Arjuna. And as Arjuna understood it, we're trying to understand the same way.
And once again, there's this idea that keeps coming up about how, it's the best process because it delivers everything, like in the last part of this purport, it doesn't depend on having to separately endeavor to purify the senses, but just the act of this, it takes care of that as well. Like it's doing all of the things.
Yeah, because Krishna consciousness is actually just a matter of focusing your attention on Krishna, meditating on Krishna, just like Krishna says, man mana bhav mad bhakta madhyaji mam namaskaru. Worship me, just always think of me, become my devotee, worship me and offer obeisances to me. Sure, being completely absorbed in me, you will come to me. So Krishna reveals himself to one who is sincerely interested. And when you take up that message from Krishna, not from your mind or from your fruitive action, what you want to do, any kind of ulterior motive, if you just listen to Krishna, then Krishna will reveal himself more and more, and you'll become closer and closer. And you'll actually develop an attraction for Krishna's message, and then you won't be able to stop. It'll just grow and grow. It's a bhakti lata creeper that is watered by the process of hearing and chanting. The more we hear and chant, the more the bhakti lata creeper grows, all the way up to the lotus feet of Krishna in the spiritual world. And then it takes root there, and the fruits of that creeper will fructify. In other words, love of God eventually will come out of that creeper. And we just have to be very careful not to let any of weeds or any of our other ulterior motives or speculative processes to interfere with that, because that's that's not the way to understand Krishna consciousness. Bhakti is the only way to understand Krishna. There's Jnana-marg, there's karma marg, and then there's the yoga marg. And Lord Chaitanya said, I was just reading this, that there was a poor man, right? And he was suffering because he didn't have any money. And then an astrologer came and said to him, actually, do you know your father left you a whole bunch of money? You're actually rich, but he died before telling you where it was. And okay, that's good knowledge, but he also had to know exactly how to get to that treasure. So the astrologer told him, okay, now if you dig on the western side, then there's going to be like wasps and hornets that are going to come out of the ground, and you won't be able to get the treasure there. If you go on the west, the southern side, then there's a ghost that's not going to be, and you'll be so disturbed by that ghost, you won't be able to get it in that way either. And if you go on the northern side, then there's a big black snake that's just going to eat everything. And so those are the three processes that are compared to the bees and hornets. The hornets and wasps are compared to karma yoga. If you endeavor for fruitive activity, then you're going to get stung by these reactions of fruitive action. And the black snake is compared to is compared to mystic yoga, and the process of gambling or speculation, mental speculations compared to ghosts. You want to merge with the supreme. Most jnanis want to like become one with the absolute, and that's compared to a ghost. And so that's neither of those three ways are able to get the treasure. But the astrologer said if you dig on the eastern side, just a little bit of earth, then you'll be able to touch the treasure, and that's the bhakti path. So I thought that's kind of a good parable to understand. We're all kind of suffering in this material world. We don't know where the treasure is. Nobody knows. They're too busy, enjoying their senses, and they don't know how to live a opulent life. And the opulent life is there because our Father has left us all this riches, and all we have to do is know where to find it, and then we'll be rich, richer than any materialist could ever dream of. Sometimes when we were working, and collecting funds, for the New Vrindavan, people would say, why don't you get a job? And I said, well, why should we get a job? We've got everything we need. We got the best philosophy, we got the best music, we've got the best association of the devotees, we've got the best food, we've got a palace of gold and a marble dance floor, and we chant and dance and eat prasadam. Why would we want anything? Why would we want to get a job? We have everything we need. And some devotee was telling me, he said, well, if you got a job, then you could put it in your name. So it's like, it's all an illusion. To think that something is mine is a complete illusion. When everything is there already, why would he need to put it in your name? It's nothing is mine anyway. Just like when my spiritual master, and when he became to Krishna consciousness, first met Prabhupada in the mid 60s, he said, Srila Prabhupada, should I renounce everything? And Prabhupada just started laughing at him. He said, what do you have to renounce? You don't have anything to renounce. So let me read text 4 here. Na karmanam anarambam, nais karmyam purushosnute, na cha sanyasanadeva sadhim samadhigachati. Synonyms. Na, not karmanam, of prescribed duties. Anarambat, by non-performance. Nais karmyam, freedom from reaction. Purusha, a man. Asnute, achieves. Na, nor. Cha, also. Sanyasanat, by renunciation. Eva, simply. Siddhim, success. Samadhigachati, attains. Translation. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. Go ahead.
The renounced order of life can be accepted when one has been purified by the discharge of the prescribed form of duties, which are laid down just to purify the heart of materialistic men. Without purification, one cannot attain success by abruptly adopting the fourth order of life, sannyas. According to the empirical philosophers, simply by adopting sannyas, or retiring from fruitive activities, one at once becomes as good as Narayan. But Lord Krishna does not approve this principle. Without purification of the heart, sannyas is simply a disturbance to the social order. On the other hand, if someone takes to the transcendental service of the Lord, even without discharging his prescribed duties, whatever he may be able to advance in the cause is accepted by the Lord, Buddha Yoga. Svapam api asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhaya. Even a slight performance of such a principle enables one to overcome great difficulties.
Go ahead and read the next verse.
Nahi kaschit kshanam api chatu tistati karma krit karyati he evasya karma sarva prakritir jair guna. Synonyms. Na, nor. He, certainly. Kaschit, anyone. Kshanam, a moment. Api, also. Jatu, at any time. Tishtati, remains. A karma krit, without doing something. Karyate, is forced to do. He, certainly. Avasya, helplessly. Karma, work. Sarva, all. Prakriti jai, born of the modes of material nature. Gunai, by the qualities. Translation. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can retain from doing something, not even for a moment.
Purport. It is not a question of embodied life, but it is the nature of the soul to be always active. Without the presence of the spirit soul, the material body cannot move. The body is only a dead vehicle to be worked by the spirit soul, which is always active and cannot stop even for a moment. As such, a spirit soul has to be engaged in the good work of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, it will be engaged in occupations dictated by the illusory energy. In contact with material energy, the spirit soul acquires material modes, and to purify the soul from such affinities, it is necessary to engage in the prescribed duties enjoined in the Shastras. But if the soul is engaged in his natural function of Krishna consciousness, whatever he is able to do is good for him. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.17 affirms this. Tvakta sardamon chananu bhujam charanam bhujam hare bhajan apakvo tapatet yato yadi yatatva vabhadram abud amusyakim kovarta apto bhajatam swadharmata. You can read the translation. Last paragraph.
If someone takes to Krishna consciousness, even though he may not follow the prescribed duties in the Shastras or execute the devotional service properly, and even though he may fall down from the standard, there is no loss or evil for him. But if he carries out all the injunctions for purification in the Shastras, what does it avail him if it is not Krishna conscious? So the purificatory process is necessary for reaching this point of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, sannyas or any purificatory,
I think it's called.
Purificatory process is to help reach the ultimate goal of becoming Krishna conscious, without which everything is considered a failure.
Text 6. Kamendriyani samyamya yaaste manasa smaram indriyartam vamudhatma mityachara sauchate. Synonyms. Karma indriyani, the 5 working sense organs. Samyamya, controlling, ya, anyone who, aste, remains, manasa, by the mind, smaran, thinking of, indriyartan, sense objects, vimudha, foolish, atma, soul, mitya, achara, pretender, sahi, uchate is called. Translation, one who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. You can read the purport.
There are many pretenders who refuse to work in Krishna consciousness, but make a show of meditation while actually dwelling within the mind upon sense enjoyment. Such pretenders may also speak on dry philosophy in order to bluff sophisticated followers. But according to this verse, these are the greatest cheaters. For sense enjoyment, one can act in any capacity of the social order. But if one follows the rules and regulations of his particular status, he can make gradual progress in purifying his existence. But he who makes a show of being a yogi while actually searching for the objects of sense gratification must be called the greatest cheater, even though he sometimes speaks of philosophy. His knowledge has no value, because the effects of such a sinful man's knowledge are taken away by the illusory energy of the Lord. Such a pretender's mind is always impure, and therefore his show of yogic meditation has no value whatsoever.
It's like fake, Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada's guru used to point out those Babajis who would imitated Haridas Thakur, and they'd sit there and chant all day and all night just to make a show for their own ego or to get some money, Meanwhile, they're thinking of women and money.
So what's the difference here then between, can you scroll up just for a second? Like one who, restrains the senses of action, but is dwelling on the sense objects, versus what was just talked about the person who may fall short. Because I'm just wondering, wouldn't the mind still dwelling on sense objects fall under that person falling short?
Well, no, he's talking about a hypocritical state of mind. And this verse is talking about a fake, you make a show of being a big philosopher or a big yogi or a big chanting Hare Krishna in a solitary place like Haridas Thakur. In the meantime, you're dwelling on sense objects. That's not just, falling short. That's actually cheating, because you're not following the process and you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, which is surrendering to Krishna and making your mind and body and words into Krishna for Krishna's service.
So is it more the mindset going into it then, like a person who might be like trying to chant but finds himself distracted by sense objects versus someone who is trying to make a show of chanting while intentionally dwelling upon?
Yeah, I mean, it's like Emerson used to say, he said, always scorn appearances and you always may. In other words, you have permission to scorn somebody who's just like making a show, because it's not really the person. It's not who they are. Somebody's making a show of being a great yogi or a great meditator or anything. It's phony. And any person who, like if you actually look at the fruits of that person's activities, then you can make a determination of whether or not they're actually making progress, even though they are in the dress of a Vaishnava and they're always chanting and this and that, and may speak philosophy or something like that. Their knowledge is always tinged by the illusory energy, because they have impurity and they're not able to actually channel Krishna's instructions to anybody else. So it has no value. Just like it says in the Bhagavatam that the person who is not a devotee has no good qualities whatsoever, because his mind, even if he's taking care of his family and if he's working honestly in his profession, his mind must be attached to the illusory energy, because he has no transcendental vision. Therefore, whatever he does is useless. So much useless labor. And he has no good qualities from the transcendental viewpoint. He might be in the different modes. He might have a mode of goodness if he's working hard and he's honest, but he really doesn't have any transcendental qualities, which are the only real amelioration to all of our problems. We have so many problems. We're always harassed by the threefold miseries, and we're harassed by our mind and our body and our other living entities, and by nature. I mean, just like look at what happened in Kentucky. That's Adi Daivaka, and these things come. And but if you're Krishna conscious, then you can get through anything. A devotee doesn't care whether he's in heaven or in hell, because he does the same thing. It's like a wheat thrasher. It's like a thrasher will separate the wheat from the chaff, either in heaven or in hell. It doesn't matter. So same way, the devotee is always doing the same thing, serving Krishna. It doesn't matter where he is. He can be in heaven, he can be in hell. He's just interested in serving Krishna. He's not even interested in liberation. So that's the stable platform. And it doesn't matter, for a devotee, it doesn't matter whether you live or die, because he's doing the same thing when he dies that he was when he was living. And that's a natural thing. That's why whatever state of mind you have at the moment of death, that state you'll attain without fail. So it just makes sense, so much sense, that we just have to practice this process and think of Krishna and let him dictate what we're doing, and surrender to him completely, and then he'll take care of us. He's our protector, he's our maintainer, he's our best friend. So if we have that faith, and actually one thing that I was realizing is how important it is. If you actually realize how important it is to understand what the urgency is to surrender to Krishna, to have that relationship with Krishna at every moment, and understand how dangerous it is not to have that relationship at any moment, because whatever you could die at any moment. Like all these people are working in that candle factory, they're just working, but they're dead, like dozens of them are dead. if they weren't thinking of Krishna, then they're going to take birth in some other body. So it's so important. That's the most dangerous type of fear, is going into a body where you might not be able to think of Krishna, in an animal body. So it's very, very important. So if you understand the urgency, then you want to like put that in your own life, and you become serious, about Krishna consciousness, and you understand the seriousness, and then you are able to impart that seriousness to others, the importance of this way of life to others, because you're practicing it yourself. If you don't do it yourself, if you're not serious yourself, you're not going to help anyone, even yourself. So if you're not empowered to spread Krishna consciousness, if you're not, connected to Krishna, you cannot give it to anyone else. So we just have to take to the process of direct bhakti, and then let Krishna do the rest. And that's all we have to do. We don't have to have any separate endeavor to get any good qualities or be kind or anything like that. Krishna is all these things. He's the best friend of all living entities. We're not the best friend of it. We don't know what to do. All of our good qualities are filthy rags, according to the Bible. We have no good qualities. So we have to just depend on Krishna, and he will show us the way to live in this world. That's it. Why don't you read the next verse?
Text 7. Yastiv indriyani manasa yam yarabate arjuna karmendriya karma yogam asaktasa vishishyate. Synonyms: Ya, one who; two, but; indriyani, the senses; manasa, by the mind; yamya, regulating; arabate, begins; Arjuna, O Arjuna; karma indriyai, by the active sense organs; karma yogam, devotion; asakta, without attachment; sa, he; vishishyate, is by far the better. Translation: on the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior.
Yeah, the senses are controlled by the mind, and the mind is controlled by the intelligence, and ultimately the soul is even higher than the intelligence. And when you're connected to the super soul, that's even higher than our soul. So it gives us the power to control the senses by the mind. Purport: instead of becoming a pseudo-transcendentalist for the sake of wanton living and sense enjoyment, it is far better to remain in one's own business and execute the purpose of life, which is to get free from material bondage and enter into the kingdom of God. The prime svartagati, or goal of self-interest, is to reach Vishnu. The whole institution of Varna and Ashram is designed to help us reach this goal of life. A householder can also reach this destination by regulated service in Krishna consciousness. For self-realization, one can live a controlled life as prescribed in the Shastras and continue carrying out his business without attachment, and that way make progress. A sincere person who follows this method is far better situated than the false pretender who adopts a show bottle spiritualism to cheat the innocent public. A sincere sweeper in the street is far better than a charlatan meditator who meditates only for the sake of making a living. Go ahead and read the Sanskrit.
Text 8. Yatam kuru karmatram karmajayo hi karmanam sarira yatrapi chate na prasidhyed karmanam. Synonyms: niyatam, prescribed; kuru, do; karma, duties; tvam, you; karma, work; yaya, better; he, certainly; karmana, then no work; sharira, bodily; yatra, maintenance; api, even; cha, also; te, your; na, never; prasidyat, is affected; akarmana, without work. Translation: perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work.
Purport: there are many pseudo-meditators who misrepresent themselves as belonging to high parentage and great professional men who falsely pose that they have sacrificed everything for the sake of advancement in spiritual life. Lord Krishna did not want Arjuna to become a pretender. Rather, the Lord desired that Arjuna perform his prescribed duties as set forth for Kshatriyas. Arjuna was a householder and a military general, and therefore it was better for him to remain as such and perform his religious duties as prescribed for the householder Kshatriya. Such activities gradually cleanse the heart of a mundane man and free him from material contamination. So-called renunciation for the purpose of maintenance is never approved by the Lord, nor by any religious scripture. After all, one has to maintain one's body and soul together by some work. Work should not be given up capriciously without purification of materialistic propensities. Anyone who is in the material world is certainly possessed of the impure propensity for loading it over material nature, or in other words, for sense gratification. Such polluted propensities have to be cleared. Without doing so through prescribed duties, one should never attempt to become a so-called transcendentalist, renouncing work and living at the cost of others. See, that's what Arjuna was asking at the beginning of the chapter. He was using Krishna consciousness as an excuse not to perform his duty. That's why this whole idea of being a pretender is brought up. Krishna didn't want him to be a pretender or like a fake. He wanted him to do his duty within the Varnashram system. Kshatriya is his prescribed duty. Everyone in each particular caste has got his duty within that system, and to perform one's duty for the satisfaction of Krishna is the goal of each ashram and caste. So he was a Kshatriya. He was meant to perform his duty. If he didn't, then he would be entangled. And if he made a show of being renounced just for the sake of being peaceful, no one would believe him anyway. Everyone would see right through it. People would call him a coward for running away from the battle, and his good name would be completely obliterated. Go ahead and read text 9.
Yajnatat karma no nyatra mukoyam karma bandhanam taratam karma konteya ukta sangha samachara. Synonyms. Yajna arthat, done only for the sake of Yajna or Vishnu. Karmana, then work. Anyatra, otherwise. Loka, world. Ayam, this. Karma bandhana, work or bondage by work. Tat, of him. Artham, for the sake. Karma, work. Kunteya, O son of Kunti. Mukta Sangha, liberated from association. Samachara, do perfectly. Translation. Work done as sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain free from bondage.
Yeah, this is the prescription for every single caste in the Varnashram system. Do your duty for the sake of satisfying the Supreme Lord. Krishna created this system of Varna Ashram in order to purify the living entities. So if you do that, then gradually you'll be able to extricate yourself from the bondage of material reactions and actions. Because everything you do for yourself, if you want to make money, you want to enjoy some sense gratification, you're going to become implicated in that work. But if you do everything for Krishna, then there is no implication whatsoever. You're completely free from any kind of reaction, good or bad. We can just do 2 more paragraphs here. I'll read the first one, you read the second one. Since one has to work even for the simple maintenance of the body, the prescribed duties for a particular social position and quality are so made that that purpose can be fulfilled. Jaga means Lord Vishnu, or sacrificial performances. All sacrificial performances are meant for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu. The Vedas enjoin Yajno vai Vishnu. In other words, the same purpose is served whether one performs prescribed yajnas or directly serves Lord Vishnu. Krishna consciousness is therefore performance of yoga as it is prescribed in this verse. The Varnashram institution also aims at satisfying Lord Vishnu. Varnashram Charavata Purushena Parapuman Vishnu Aradyate. Vishnu Purana 388. Read the last paragraph and then we're going to have to quit.
Therefore, one has to work for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Any other work done in this material world will be a cause of bondage, for both good and evil work have their reactions, and any reaction binds the performer. Therefore, one has to work in Krishna consciousness to satisfy Krishna or Vishnu. And while performing such activities, one is in a liberated stage. This is the great art of doing work. And in the beginning, this process requires very expert guidance. One should therefore act very diligently under the expert guidance of a devotee of Lord Krishna, or under the direct instruction of Lord Krishna himself, under whom Arjuna had the opportunity to work. Nothing should be performed for sense gratification, but everything should be done for the satisfaction of Krishna. This practice will not only save one from the reaction of work, but also gradually elevate one to transcendental loving service of the Lord, which alone can raise one to the kingdom of God.
Yeah, it says both good and evil work have their reactions, and any reaction binds a performer. Say, for example, if you do something good for somebody else, or if somebody else does some good for you, if say somebody loans you some money or somebody does you a favor, you're going to have to come back in your next life and pay that back. Whereas if you work simply for Vishnu, if you work for his satisfaction, then there's no reaction. That's akarma, neither good karma or bad karma. So that's a really important verse, because yoga is an ancient process that men and demigods have been introduced in this world in order to be happy within this world. There's no other way to become happy than to sacrifice for Vishnu. And in this age, the sacrifice is chanting the holy name. They used to have big sacrifices back in the which one is Satya, Treta, Dwapara. I think in the Treta Yuga, they used to perform big sacrifices. And but that's not the method. Nobody can afford these things nowadays, and there are no expert brahmanas that can perform these sacrifices. It costs a lot of money to do these big elaborate sacrifices. Now we have you have to offer everything. They used to offer everything on golden plates. Now we have styrofoam plates. So it's like nothing compared to what was used to be going on in the Treta Yuga. And also people lived for like 10,000 years back then. In Satya Yuga, they lived for 100,000 years, and they could meditate for 60,000 years. Now we only live for 100 years. So we don't have time for that. So we just have to take the direct process, chant Hare Krishna, read the scripture. And, in that way, whatever we do, if we complete the process in this life, then we'll go back to Godhead. That's the goal. But even if we don't, if we, become deviated, then in the next life, because whatever we do will be taken up in the next body, like in the body of a family of a brahmana, or a rich person who you'll have time to chant and hear. So, whatever you do, it's like an eternal bank account, and you'll pick up where you left off. Whereas if you don't perform something in this life, like say you want to build a big skyscraper building, if it's uncompleted, then it just sits there. There's no, it's completely useless, if it's not completed, if it's half done. So whatever in materially you do, then it has to be complete. Otherwise, even materially, it's worthless. But, whatever we do in the spiritual realm, whatever sacrifice we perform for Vishnu, that is to our eternal benefit. Anyway, we went a little bit over what we can because there's only two people. Mm-hmm. But we're gonna quit here anyways. We're up to text 10 here, and we'll pick it up on Wednesday if you can.
Okay, sounds good. See you then.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Dick.